Welcome to the OTL's Virtual Engineering Series. This year, we are focused on global learning, specifically as defined in the AAC&U's value rubric, which I will drop in the chat. And we are excited to welcome Suzanne Walsh, a part-time faculty in anthropology, to share her experiences in her course. Go ahead and share your slides, Suzanne.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Sharing is not turned on at the moment.
Oh, 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, you should be able to share now.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'm excited to talk about this topic. It's to be honest, I find this one to be a tough one to get students to think about their personal and social responsibility. In my particular course, which is Anthropology 2050, the Anthropology of Business, I have a lot of students who come from non-anthropology majors, so they're not really primed for anthropology thinking. And that's one of the starting points of the course itself is I try and get this group of students to start thinking how an anthropologist would think, because anthropologists really are thinking about personal and social responsibility in all of the work that they do. So with the rubric measuring, what is it measuring? Ethical, social, and environmental awareness in a global context. Really, the main point of this slide is down at the bottom. The 4 ways in which students can identify, explain, analyze, or take action around these 3 topics: ethical, social, and environmental awareness. The course is not necessarily designed exactly around this particular idea, but there are many components within the course that fit well with this idea of what is your personal responsibility within a global context. So the ways in which my course supports this rubric, it centers on cultural understanding and global interconnectedness, especially in the business context. So as I said, I do bring in all kinds of anthropological thinking, and I have to prime the students with, really what is anthropology is the beginning part of the course. But since students coming into the class are business majors, engineering majors, sometimes health sciences, or health alliance types of courses, I bring in a lot of materials that relate to their particular majors so that they can have a much greater connection with what's happening with the materials themselves. So we cover everything in this course, from globalization, cross-cultural communication, corporate social responsibility. All of these topics have students are asked to engage with them and think about them, understand how they fit within a broader scheme of maybe their personal life or their potential career that they're looking to do after they finish at Wayne State. And all of the readings and assignments are sort of centered around a bit of an ethical reflection, like, how does this really fit within your world? What do you think about it? I really ask students in a very gentle kind of way to share their position on what it means to be sort of a global citizen. So in terms of student outcomes and growth along this rubric, there are weekly topic questions and major projects that students do. And within both of those topic questions and the projects, they're asked to synthesize diverse cultural perspectives. Quite often, I will have students also bring in their own perspective. We have a really rich and diverse student body at Wayne State, and I want them to feel free to share their own personal perspectives, maybe their family perspective. We have a lot of students who maybe are first-time immigrants or their family have immigrated here. And I want them to bring all of those thoughts and experiences to the work that they do in the course. So we build within the course, I build on some of the theoretical frameworks and move to a practical application. So I don't get too deep into theory. with this particular course because it is a lot of students not from anthropology, but we touch on some things. But then I want them to take what we do in the beginning of the course and apply it to a mini ethnography, an interview, and bring in their own perspectives at that point. I don't ask students to necessarily go out in the world and um, take action, but I ask them to think about what types of actions they could take or what in the course material in their projects has caused them to think differently about the world. And this ultimately gets them to think more about their civic responsibility and have some ethical reasoning when it comes to business topics. So some of the ways in which materials in the course are aligned with this idea of ethical and global thinking. A number of the readings that I have students do are certainly aligned, and I mapped them to which of the milestones across the rubric, looking for different ways in which not only identify, explain, analyze, synthesize, or take action. So one of our primary texts in the course is a text by Ferraro Brioti, The Cultural Dimensions of Global Business. This really supports them in being able to explain ethical, social, and environmental consequences of local and national decisions. So our class activity for that is there's a lot of case study discussion. I have cases all throughout the course aligned with the different majors that are taking the class so that they can sort of think about it within the context of their potential career. I also have them looking at readings that help them understand how to do some type of anthropological research or understanding how an anthropologist might approach a problem. So a reading from Rita Denny, What Does Cultural Analysis Mean? Really explaining how cultural perspectives shape business decisions. This moves them into milestone 3, analyzing the ethical, social, and environmental challenges. This relates to the mini ethnography that they do towards the end of the semester, where they're going out to a coffee shop chain and taking all of the things that we have covered in the course and essentially analyzing their experience in that coffee shop. How does it fit within all of the ideas that we've discussed within business anthropology? We also do a reading from Berlin, Making or Marketing a Difference. Again, this falls under milestone 3, the analysis. And we actually do a chocolate tasting in the class. We taste the chocolate not because I'm any expert in chocolate at all, but we're really looking at chocolate from the perspective of how does it fit within this sort of global supply chain? And what are the ethical factors that are happening within that global supply chain? And students are asked, can you taste price? You know, the answer might be obvious. No, you can't taste price, but it's a different way of experiencing chocolate. Can you taste price? Can you taste where it's from? So we use this particular activity as a launch pad for our larger project on looking at a coffee chain. And students are always really surprised by the chocolate tasting. Initially, when I talk about it with them, they're very excited. They get to eat chocolate, you know, and that's going to be a class activity. But then when we go through the different types of chocolate, people have very specific opinions about them. And they just start to see how a commodity fits within to this larger global framework in ways that they'd never really considered before. And then I have some materials in the course that really are about thinking about their future. So C.K. Prahalad's article on serving the world's poor profitably, it's not really an article that students can take action on really right now, but it's something that will help them think as they go into their careers, especially so many of them are business majors, go into their careers and think more broadly about how can business be ethical? How can business help more people? It's a capitalist framework. So quite often in the business schools, students are not getting many of these sort of broader ideas about how business can be ethical. So it's really helpful for them to start seeing that like there are ways in which they can take action in small ways throughout their careers. One of the ways I sort of understand if students are really getting it, is what they reflect on in their mini ethnographies and their interviews. I see a range of ideas coming from students, and I'm not focused totally on, oh, we need everyone to be at a level 4, the capstone level. If someone can at least get to, say, a level where they're able to explain, like this student was excited to share what I just learned from class about coffee with my mom. If they're able to explain it, I feel like I've done my work. At least this person is on a pathway to maybe building some more understanding, building and maybe taking action at a later date. But quite often, I find most students do get to at least a level 3 of analysis. And there's a few students who get to a level 4 in really understanding how the ways in which they can take action. Like, for instance, this person saying that um, the Starbucks is where I send students out to do their mini ethnography. That it was an amazing site of social interaction, cultural negotiations, business strategy, and schoolwork. The fact that the student could walk away from that experience, being able to identify all of these things, and that the process of participant observation forced me to slow down and pay attention. This is one of the hallmarks of an anthropological thought process: is how do we slow down? How do we take note of everything that's happening around us, and then how do we integrate that into the things that we've learned in the course? So I don't expect a level 4 out of everyone, but if I can get most students to at least a level 2 or 3, I feel like I've done a good job. um, all right, let me move that. And um, so I guess a big takeaway from this would be to think about for your own classes, like what rubric aligned activities exist in your course that can maybe be ramped up a little bit more to bring this particular rubric to life. Um, I actually went to ChatGPT to get some ideas, because I thought, well, not everyone's going to be an anthropologist, right? But what are some ideas that people could do in any type of course? So one could be a reflection journal. So this would be a real basic type of thing, bringing them from a level 1 to a level 2. Another might be a more involved community engagement or service learning project. That would certainly take a lot more planning, might be appropriate for a 3,000 or a 4,000 level type of course, but would bring students from a 3 to a 4. Some other ideas might be a personal code of ethics statement. And this is one that actually could take students from a 1 to a 4, because it could build out the identify, action, etc., go from all levels. And then one that's I think really important and starting to be a key thing for, and something I will be including more in my course itself as I redesign it this summer, is around AI, privacy, and digital ethics. I see, I use ChatGPT myself, and I see students using it a lot more. And I think there needs to be a lot more specific activities around how do we use this appropriately. So moving from a 2 to a 4 around AI could be a really helpful activity for students. So I'll stop there. I think I've probably talked more than 10 minutes, but I'm excited for any questions you might have or thoughts you have on this particular rubric, and I'll pause there.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Just really quickly, I want to wrap up that we do have some resources available to everyone, and I will send out the slides to everyone who is here as a participant, and then I will go ahead and stop the recording and let folks answer or ask questions.